Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is the new Heltec T114 mesh node, and today we're going to be testing out the solar input on this little device. Now, this isn't the first little development board that we've seen with a solar panel input on the actual board itself, and because these little devices are getting really power efficient now, it's actually practical to run these on quite small solar panels with a smallish battery, and that's pretty interesting, especially if you want something that's just going to run 24/7 even in kind of the UK weather. It's possible to achieve that now with low power consumption devices like this. So here's the Heltec board with its solar panel input. Here's a solar panel which I've grabbed, which kicks out about 200 milliamps up to 6 volts, which is going to be good for this. I've also got a little battery here, so let's go hook up this lot outside. It's sunny right now, and just see what happens. But before we do that, a quick update from our partner Zero Fox, who makes some amazing enclosures for your Meshtastic projects, including this Nibbler Andy Kirby Special Edition, which has all the translucent backing. Absolutely love that. But coming soon, guys, the popular bender case is going to be updated to support the Heltec T114. It's going to be absolutely brilliant to have a T114 in this lovely enclosure. So stay tuned for that. Links to Zero Fox 3D are in the description. Now on with the show. Okay, so we're outside. I've got the battery connected to the node there. The node's actually on, but you can't see because of the screen because it's quite bright out here. So this panel's in full sun. You can see here the little orange charging light, which is the same one that comes on when you plug it into USB. And you can see here we've got 31 milliamps going in to the battery. So it's travelling this way, and we can confirm that because if we put our hand over the panel, we then go into a negative current draw, so minus 15 milliamps, which is about right for this node. Tad higher than, maybe it's because the screen's on, I don't know, but anyway, you can see that, and obviously it's going to go back up to 31. So now we're in positive. We're basically charging the battery. It's only 31 milliamps, but what's coming in from the panel is going to cancel out anything that's being used from the battery. So, and it's switching, I believe, as well. So it's switched between sort of the solar charge input and the battery. I think when you sort of obviously cut that off, then it will switch back over to the battery. So yeah, with that, it seems to be working. You know what I was thinking though, the charge current is not actually that high. This is actually like I've seen nearly 200 milliamps coming from this panel on a MPPT charge circuit. So yeah, this solar charger is probably not very efficient. I'll show you what I mean. Before anyone asks, the battery voltage is at 3.5, so it's not throttling back on the current to you know, because the battery's getting fully charged, nothing like that. So yeah, this is what I mean about the efficiency, guys. So I'm using the same battery as before. I'm obviously not charging through the Heltec. I'm actually using this little MPPT charge controller, and you can see here the current from the same panel going into the same battery is over 100 milliamps. So yeah, if you do just hook the solar panel up to the Heltec through its solar connector, you know, at least this example I've got here, it's not going to be kind of using that panel to its best efficiency at all. As I say, I've seen this nearly at 200 milliamps. You know, we're coming to the end of the day now, so it's not going to be as high, but you get the idea. Okay, so we're on the bench now. What I'm going to try and do next is sort of simulate the power coming in from a solar panel by using this power supply over here. So at the moment, we've just booted up the node, and it's being powered from this battery over here. Just make sure that's in shot. Yeah, so it's all connected. You can see the node has booted up. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of set this power supply to, say, let's do 5 volts, because, you know, the panel should be around 5 to 6 volts, and it's going to drop to a sort of a stable 5 if you're pulling, you know, a kind of within its parameters. If you pull the current out of it, the voltage is going to drop a bit. So let's do that, and we'll click on the power supply. So we've clicked on the power supply and the light has come on. So that's showing we're actually charging the battery. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but over here on the meter, we're actually reading 0.65 of an amp. So 650 milliamps is now going into the battery, which is wildly different to what we were seeing obviously before, because this power supply is just unlimited. Well, it's set to a 5 amps or something like that, limited. But, you know, this power supply is able to deliver 5 volts without dropping. So if we turn that off and then we just start dropping down in sort of increments, you have to turn this power supply off to do this each time. You can't just roll down the power, but I mean, it is what it is. So if we do 4.5 volts now, So you can see here, it's still charging, but the current is lower, 310 milliamps, so still not bad. If we keep going down to, let's go down to 4.2. There you go. The light has come on and it's pretty dim. You can see here as well, it's sort of, yeah, it's flickering around. This display actually looks like it might be a bit dim as well. And if we turn that off, then you see, did you see that? The LCD display just kind of went, you know, it dimmed. Let's do it again. And then you sort of turn the power off and then it dims and then it comes back up. So if we now try going below 4.2 volts, so that's 4.2 volts, you can see the LED is pretty dim there. Nothing's going into the battery and it's obviously, yeah, it's working. But if we go down to 4.1, let's see what happens there. So look, now you've kind of got this, the light's flickering on and off, which is obviously meaning that, you know, there's not enough power from the panel to sort of charge or do anything from. So this is what's going to happen. You're going to end up, you know, when the sun goes down and it's kind of, you're getting into that dusk time or it's cloudy, that kind of thing. This is where you're probably going to be. And then, you know, if you go down to like 3.9 volts, something like that, it's not allowing it to do anything at all there. So that's the thing. Your panel is going to have to be above, is going to have to be able to sustain 4.2 volts at least before something happens, before something starts going into the battery. Ideally 4.3. You know, that's the thing. And obviously the less sun that's on your panel, the less it's going to be able to sustain that voltage when this circuit tries to pull some current from it. The other thing I want to test is how high does this charge the battery up via the solar. We've seen on these Heltecs before, they normally cut off well before 4.2 volts. Keep that in mind. Don't leave nodes plugged in overnight with batteries plugged into them, as you shouldn't with any sort of device that you don't really, you know, that might be a bit DIY, that sort of side of things. So I'm going to fire this up and leave that on, and we are at 0.74 of an amp. Let's go up a little bit higher, 5.5 volts. Yeah, so we'll get a charge into this battery and we'll see when it cuts out, and I'll measure the voltage of this battery. Interesting stuff. So ideally you're going to want to have between a 1 watt and 5 watt solar panel, basically 5 to 6 volts, 6 volts maximum. And that will probably work. The circuit doesn't look like the most efficient thing in the world. I don't think it's MPPT, so it's not, you know, it's not going to be as efficient. It's just pretty kind of rudimentary stuff. I'll have to test the racks because I'm not sure how they do it. But anyway, and that's a test for another time. So yeah, between 1 and 5 watt solar panel, 6 volts maximum. I wouldn't go above that in any of those, no higher in the wattage and no higher in the voltage. But I will be testing this a little bit more. And I'm just going to leave this running now to charge the battery up and we'll see what happens. Right, so charging is still underway and this thing feels pretty hot. So if we just measure that, it's measuring around 52. The current's dropping off a bit now anyway, so, but that's a pretty standard, yeah, that's hot over there in that corner. Let's just measure that over there. Yeah, it's heading towards 60 in that. That's why you don't want to overload this thing, guys. You know, don't want to use too big a panel because you could end up with a problem if that's in a box with the sun kind of beaming down on it. Don't trust that. I've put a fan on it. Okay, so it's the next morning now. I didn't want to leave it charging overnight, so I've kind of just resumed the charge this morning. Okay, so it's just finished. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera, turning off. But hey ho, let's measure the voltage and see where we were at. So it's probably like 4.16. You can see it sort of just falling down a little bit now from there. So that is fine. You know, it's not going to overcharge the battery. I'm going to do anything dodgy. Charger's stopped now. There's still voltage coming in from the panel. So all looks good so far. As long as you've got an adequate size solar panel to power the device, it will actually power the device, charge the battery, and the battery won't be overcharged because it cuts off at this sort of 4.16 level. And at this point, as long as there's enough power from the solar panel, there's enough light on it, the node will actually run from the solar panel and the battery will remain fully charged. So what we're going to do now is simulate what happens when light moves away from the panel, maybe like clouds come, the weather changes, or maybe nighttime is creeping in. What should happen is it should switch back over to battery power. Okay, so the battery's fully charged. The node is effectively running from solar right now. You can't really see any current reading on here because this doesn't register down low enough, unfortunately. But what we can do here, so we can simulate basically, you know, light going from the panel. I can't do it in a gradual way. I'll have to do it as a sort of, you know, just turn this off. So if we just kill that completely, what's now happening is we are now being powered by this battery. And then, say for example, you know, the sun might come back and you see we've actually started charging again. And this will obviously, you know, it will top off this battery each time that happens. So if we turn it off there, now obviously if the light is falling in a way, we can sort of put it down to maybe like, I don't know, 4.2 volts, so you're going to get sort of a dusk sort of setting. If we turn that on, you can see here nothing's happening. We're still running from battery power. If we sort of raise it up to about 4.3, still nothing. It's not enough to, you know, charge that battery. 4.4, no, still not enough. 4.5. So you remember we were doing this before, right at the beginning. If you've got a low voltage and the battery voltage is a bit lower, then it will actually start, you know, charging. See now 4.8 volts. It's not going to charge that battery until you get some solid sunlight on that panel. So the light finally goes completely. There's nothing falling on the panel. The node is just going to run overnight completely fine on this battery. And with this size battery drawing like 9 milliamps or something, it's going to last for ages. Even if you had a week of dark weather, this would probably be absolutely fine. But say for example it was like weeks and weeks of like dark weather, which is kind of what happens in the UK winter. What would happen when this battery goes completely flat and this node basically turns off? Is there a way to get this node to sort of come back on again? You know, does it come back on or does it turn off? We've seen that happen in a lot of other situations. But what happens with this device? I want to see what happens. So to simulate that, because I'm not going to wait ages for this big battery to discharge, I'm going to use this tiny little battery here. So this battery hasn't got a lot of charge left in it. We're going to kill the solar panel and we'll see what happens when this node dies. It's still night time. In the morning, the sun comes up. Does it restart? That's what I want to know. So we're going to have to leave that a while. Display is looking very, very dim. We're down to 2 point something volts. I mean, this shouldn't even be still on, I don't think. So it looks like this node is just going to carry on until there's just nothing left at all in the battery, which is not good for the battery. If the battery had a protection circuit on it, then it would have definitely cut in by now. But you can see we're fading fast. It's going to go any minute now. Okay, so it's gone. It's completely off. There's no juice left in that battery at all. So, sun starts to come up, hits about 4.3 volts. And what happens then? The battery's charging and the node is restarting. That's exactly what we want. So that is looking pretty good. Even if we did get a bit of clouds, the node's obviously going to go off. But as soon as the sun sort of comes back up, you know, and it falls onto the panel, then the node is going to restart, and it's just going to do that. So, you know, clouds come over, and then maybe sort of it doesn't get bright until a little later, where it's actually really good. And then you can see, obviously, the current going in is quite high. Probably too much for that little battery, actually. So we better stop that. Interestingly, after a couple of times of doing that, it's not actually turning back on. So what's the reason for that? So yeah, that's not ideal, is it? Oh, that's a shame. It looked quite promising, but why has that done that? I don't really understand. Got into a mess. Can we actually even turn this node back on? That's weird. Have I just broken it? Seems like I can't actually get this node to restart. Yeah, the only way I could do it was actually just disconnect the battery, so it got into some weird state there. That's a bit weird. I'm going to test that again, see what happens. Right, okay, so it's gone off again. You can see it's completely off. And we're going to use 5.5 volts. So that turned that on. And the node's actually turning on now. So let's just cut that again. Flipping over to the battery power. It looks like just that little bit of charge is just obviously keeping that battery alive this time. Let's just try it again. So we've got 4.4 on the panel. So that's fired that up. And the node should turn on. Okay, that's okay. Let's just turn that off. Just to simulate, you know, clouds going over, that sort of thing. Back on again. Yeah, it's like the second time it does it, it won't restart. So I've let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure that battery's completely depleted, and we'll just try it again, see if it does start up. So we'll give some power from the panel, and it looks like, doesn't look like that's going to start, does it? No, that's not going to start. So let's just turn that off. I'll try a higher voltage coming in from the panel, just see if that makes any difference. You never know. It's definitely not starting, is it? I mean, you can't even do a reset. It's kind of gone into a weird state. I'll let that charge up and just see if it does actually turn on. No, that doesn't seem to make any difference. We've charged this battery up a little bit. It's just so weird, isn't it? I mean, let's just remove that from there. I mean, without sort of taking that out and putting that back in again, replugging the battery, you just can't get it to restart unless you do that. What happens with a battery that's got a protection circuit on it? So this, I believe, has a protection circuit on here. So it's all plugged in. This little battery, I think, has a protection circuit that cuts off around 2.4 volts, something like that. At the moment, it's completely flat. So let's just put a little bit of charge into it and just see what happens. So on the meter, you can see 2.6. The node's actually trying to start up. 2.5, 2.4, 3, 2. You'd expect that to go to just like 0 pretty instantly, quicker than it would if it was falling at that rate, if the little BMS thing inside just kind of cuts it. So you should see that. There you go. That's it there. So that's nothing. So it's showing nothing. And obviously it's kind of cut the power to the node. So based on our, like, you know, disconnecting of the battery and, you know, to get the node to sort of reinitiate, this could actually make this work. So let's put a bit more charge into it and just see what happens. So we're going up, node starting, which is fine. So the panel goes off a little bit. We're still there, but it's doing a reset. Or is it? I don't know what's happened here. It's not enough power, is it, to make the nodes sort of restart. But then if we put the power on from the panel, okay, it is actually alive. It's not reset or crashed or anything like that. So you turn off here, you know, sun's gone in again. It's very, very low. You can see a really, really low screen. The LED's really, really dim there. You probably won't see that in the camera. But we're dropping down to voltage. If we put the panel on, it's obviously going to wake up again. So that's good. It's still running, and it's going to carry on running until this battery voltage gets down to like 2.4, and then the BMS on this battery just cuts, which is going to help the situation, I think, because it's just basically disconnecting the battery from the circuit, which is what you want. So let's just wait for that to do that. The node's kind of all over the place at the moment because the voltage is just too low for it, really. But what we're going to see here is, yeah, everything cut. So there's nothing. So there's no power into the node at all. Panel comes back, and we should see that reboot, if I'm very much mistaken. There you go. So that is a way to do it. You've got to have a battery protection module on your battery. Learning curve stuff. So yeah, you've got to have the battery protection module on the battery, because then that prevents the voltage from going too low, which I think is what causes the problem. for this non-restarting sort of situation that we're seeing here with a lot of this node. And it's not just this node that does it. I know some of the racks do this as well, and this was a problem people were reporting. When the battery runs out and there's no solar, the node doesn't start again once the solar comes up and recharges the battery. And I've seen this before on Heltecs, other Heltecs like the V3s. So yeah, it is a problem, and I think this could be a solution to solving that, because you're just disconnecting that battery. You're just breaking the circuit completely when the voltage goes down on the battery, and then you're resetting that when the solar charge comes in. So it makes a lot of sense. Sorry for this long-winded video. I feel like this should have been like a live stream or something like that, really. But it's all interesting. I've learned a lot from this anyway. So even if nobody else does, it's there for my reference at least. So to sum up then, I think the Heltec T114 isn't a bad device to be using as a solar node, like remotely with a little solar panel attached to it via its standard solar input. It's not perfect. It doesn't seem that efficient in terms of how much power it can convert from a solar panel. We saw the little MPPT Charge controller board that I used. I'll leave a link to those down below as well. They are pretty good. Maybe it would be worth using one of those instead of the built-in solar charge controller in the Heltec. Also, we saw that basically you need to sort of be using a battery management or kind of like a little BMS on your one cell battery to make sure the node doesn't drag down the voltage of the battery too low. It's bad for the batteries anyway. You shouldn't be kind of, discharging them right down to nothing. So finding a little BCM or PCM board for your battery is definitely going to be a must in that way. Finally, we also learned that you really want to be using at least a 1 watt panel for this setup. I was using that small panel, which is a 1 watt, 6 volts maximum, but it can deliver like a couple of 100 milliamps to the node, which will work, but it's not going to charge the battery the fastest. If you want to charge the battery faster, you're going to need sort of 3, 4, 5 watts of solar power to actually do that. But this isn't a bad little node for remote placement. It is very, very power efficient because it's using the NRF52 chipset, so it has a lot going for it in that way. Anyway guys, hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.